There are very few things that you can control when you're coming out, and who you come out to is one of those, and when you come out to them. And it's an amazing thing. Check it out.
Friends and enemies, lovers and haters, your boy is back. It has been so amazing to be a part of honestly producing someone else's podcast. Even though this is my show, Alexa has done a marvelous job of hosting our LGBTQ plus series. And I honestly cannot begin to tell you how much I've learned from this experience. And I'm really excited. Alexa and I are getting ready to sit down, and we're going to do a full recap of this whole thing. We're going to talk about what we learned technically, what we learned emotionally and spiritually, and what were the moments that stood out the most to us. So if you haven't subscribed, like, followed, or do any of that, jump on that now. For those of you who are on the Patreon, you guys will get a rough cut pre-release. I'm talking just straight off the streets, hot from the press before it's cleaned up. You know, you got to get that rough cut out, you know, like when you used to pick up CDs at the bodega. I mean, I guess I just dated myself, considering this is a podcast and you guys are listening to this on a streaming service. Those days are gone. So the only way you can get the end is by joining our Patreon. Go to the website, check out the link in our bios on our social media platforms. We are there. But today I want to introduce Nikki Smith. And funny enough, you just heard Alexa talk to Nikki Smith. So before you listen to this podcast, if you have not listened to Nikki's, I highly recommend you listen to Alexa and Nikki talk and then me in that order. I feel like it's very enlightening to hear two different hosts talk to the same guest from two different worldly views, perspective, two different truths, two different realities. It's going to be different. It's going to be beautiful. Nikki Smith, single-handedly, is probably one of the greatest climbers and most well-known climbers in the industry. She wants to make the world a place where everybody can communicate, can talk, and we can use the skills that we already have as climbers to make this place a more inclusive and better place. If you don't know her name, now you do. Enjoy the episode with Nikki Smith. Check it out. All right. So, and just so you kind of have a premise, so, and I don't know if I sent you this. So, like, my podcast is called Sends and Suffers. Mm-hmm. The premise of it, it's kind of changed recently. At first, I was like, I always want to talk about like the suffering and the sends that people do on the wall and out in the adventurous world. But then, as anything you create, it kind of has a life of its own, and you don't really get to choose what it does very quickly. And so now I kind of landed on this a couple days ago. You know, Sends and Suffers the mission of Sends and Suffers is to talk to the adventurous souls that live within this community that we love. I just want to know about the sending and the suffering that you did that made you who you are today and who you are in front of the microphone today. And so I have followed your work for quite a while, as long as social media has been a thing. You know, you are, and I feel weird saying this because I think about it. If I was in your position, I would hate it. But in my community, especially at Dallas and the LGBTQ plus community, you're a hero for a lot of people and they love you. A friend of mine, actually, Alexa, I think is probably going to be reaching out to you probably pretty soon. And so I'm just really honestly psyched and honored to meet you because I think you're just a rad individual and a rad human being just to begin with. And I think all your accolades and I've read a lot of the stuff, and I was actually listening to the podcast that you did with She Explores on the way here, and you know, I don't know, I think you're an awesome person, and I think it's more of a privilege just for me to be near you and soak up your magical vibes that you're just blasting out into the universe. And so I want to take as much of them. But I want to go ahead and start this thing. And as much as I just talked about you, I'm not going to assume everybody listening to this podcast knows you. But I think if anybody who's really into rock climbing and actually respects the sport and loves the sport to its deepest core should know you. But who are you? Where are you from? And what is your connection to the outdoors?
No, I'm having a hard time talking. Thanks. That was really nice. I'm Nikki Smith, and I've been climbing since 1992 in Portland, Oregon, and then I think I lived there maybe a year, and my dad got a job for the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, and we moved to Moab, Utah, and we're there for a couple years, and we moved to the Salt Lake Valley, and was here till I was about 10 or so, and then we moved about 45 minutes from Salt Lake to the Ogden area.
Okay.
And I was there until 18 when I joined the Army, and left for about 3 years and moved back to Salt Lake in 97, and I've been here ever since.
Nice. And so as we were talking right before, you spent a little time in Texas, and I don't want to go too far and back and forth, but that is where you met your wife, correct?
Yeah.
Nice. Can you tell me a little bit about like that story? Because everything I've read, like it just says you've met her. I didn't really I was kind of like, how did these two comets collide?
Yeah. So I was stationed at Fort Hood in Central Texas, about a 4-hour drive from Dallas, hour and a half or so from Austin. And I was single, living on the base or post, and I was just always trying to find someone to go climbing with, go mountain biking with, do things, and was having a really hard time with that. And I grew up in Utah, grew up Mormon, and wasn't really a part of the church in a lot of ways. Stopped going in my teens after my father died. And when I was in the Army, I figured, well, if I go back to church, most likely I'll meet people from Utah. If I meet people from Utah, they might be into the outdoors, and I'll find some people to do something with. So I started just going to some of the like single adult activities, and I went to this volleyball game. I don't remember what it was. The week before that or two, I first saw my wife Sherry, and she was gorgeous, and like she didn't notice me at all.
I think that's pretty par for the course. When you find the person that you like, they're like they're just like going by, and you're just like starstruck.
Yeah. So like noticed her, but then didn't see her for a couple of weeks, and we were both at a thing 2-3 weeks later. It was a volleyball game, and she actually came up and started talking to me, and gave her a ride home that night, and we went on a date a few days later and never stopped dating.
That's awesome. So she did notice you then, if she came up to you.
She kind of noticed me the first time, and it wasn't the best impression. I was wearing a tank top, and she hated tank tops.
I was about to ask you to unpack that, but that's fair. I hate wearing them, so I generally avoid them myself, but that's fair. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So we were married really quickly. She was visiting. She had graduated from college with her associates and was going to start at a new school that end of that summer. And she went out to visit her sister, and she never left. Like, we just started dating, and I think we were engaged in 3 months, married in 6.
Oh, wow.
So really fast.
Really? Well, I mean, you guys are still together to this day, so
Yeah,
I mean, it's
been
beautiful.
20, March was 25 years.
Oh, hell yeah.
So,
Congratulations.
thanks.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So, kind of moving into about kind of a little bit of your climbing accolades. I was actually just talking to Cody a couple, like literally maybe 72 hours ago.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, as someone who aspires to be a developer of your class and abilities and skills and as fast as you do it, I was just chuckling about something that Cody had said because I knew what you were going to say before he even spit it out. And he had mentioned that you had both of his lines and that, and an entire column had come down or something had really recently just fallen. And before the words even came out of his mouth of what he said, what you said, you're like, oh, now there's new lines to bolt. And I was sitting there thinking about it. Like the moment he says the rock fell, I was like, oh, new roots, new projects. And I don't know. It's just, I think this is something that was recently said, well, also said on Alex Honnold's podcast, Climbing Gold, too. They talked to someone about developing roots. And I guess the question that I really have for you, or I'd like you to kind of talk about, is do you see a separation between rock climbing and developing roots? Because I think in the modern day, people look at root developers as like, this is what you do. And then, but I think for an actual person who develops them, or coming from a certain generation or group or stewardship or whoever trained you, like it's just climbing. It's just like it's a part of it. It's not this, I don't know, it's not this thing. And so I guess honestly, like what my question to you is like really what drives you and like why do you want to do it? You could just go rock climb. I mean, don't get me wrong. And I'm sure you've answered this a billion times, but I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah, I think some of it, I'm sure, has to do with when I started climbing in the early 90s. I mean, in the US, people have been climbing for quite a while, but the boom really happened, with the golden era in Yosemite in the 50s and 60s, with first ascents and just kind of really pushing the sport and the equipment and growing all that. And if you were a climber, you did first ascents that because there wasn't established routes. There weren't guidebooks. And so all of that was just a part of the tradition, I think, when I started. And, the first videos and magazines and that I saw of climbers, like everything was about first ascents. That was just such a big part of it. And
Yeah.
I'd go out into the hills in the Ogden area, and there was a really famous climber, Jeff Lowe, who used to live there, and I would find these old pins in random places that weren't in the little pamphlet guidebook at the time, and everyone's like, oh yeah, that's probably a low route. And
That's awesome.
that was just fascinating to me, and I loved exploring and just going out by myself and finding places. And then I always wanted to do a first ascent, but I wasn't, quite ready for that. I started at 16.
Okay.
So it took a little while. And once I felt like I was ready for it, it can be a commitment a lot of times because drill is expensive, bolting hardware is expensive. Even if you're doing trad first ascents, the amount of time it takes to clean something, all the gear you need to be out there, partners that are willing to put up with going out for days sometimes.
Few between.
Yeah, I mean, like for long crack multi pitches, I carry a ice axe on my harness and use that to scrape dirt and stuff out of the cracks.
Oh,
It's just so much time and energy, and not everyone's wanting to do that or has the time to do that.
yeah.
But there's an artistic part to it. I know a lot of people, there's always been this idea of conquering things in climbing, and I've never really viewed it that way. It's always been something kind of really personal to me, and being able to just hike around and look at some cliff face or look at this mountain and envisioning this line and thinking about how can I piece that together. Like there's this cool Waco, like 60 feet up. Like, how can I get to that and past it? Or whatever the feature might be. And I just love that process of envisioning something and trying to create it and then having to push myself to meet whatever that is on the wall. Like it might be something easy and it's just a beautiful aesthetic line. Maybe it's something I just want to give back to the community and bolt easier stuff. And then sometimes there's things that like I really want to challenge myself and do something hard. And it's just trying to figure out how to put it all together can be really cool.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I've I put up a couple lines and my friends have asked me that and I was like, it's kind of blue collar dirty work when you're getting into it, especially when you're cleaning. But there's like this Zen state where you kind of, I don't know, I feel like this is a weirdly weird way to say this. And I don't know if you would agree, but I feel like when you're in the process of it, you're dumping off the hard drive is not like you're just deleting stuff off the hard drive and you're making room for other things because you have to be so present because you can't be anywhere else. Like you really just like for your own personal safety and sanity, I don't think you can be anywhere else. That's awesome. So do you have anything coming up that you're like excited about or you're trying to do? I mean, if it's hush hush, that's fine.
Oh, no, like I try not to keep stuff too secret.
Fair enough.
I've got a couple lines that they're both mixed lines, rock and or bolts and gear. And I started bolting both of them a while ago and I've had a lot of elbow issues and then other things going on in my life lately that have kind of kept me away from it. So I'm hoping to go back to those and start working those this year. And then, I don't know, I have folders full of potential first ascents. Like I take because I'm a photographer, I always have my camera. And so I'll zoom in on something and like write notes about it. Or in my guidebooks, often have notes for photography and for potential first ascents, just things to go back to. And I've got a lot of things I want to do. I think some of it's just getting the motivation to go out there and finding people to go with.
Yeah, I know your feeling. In Texas, is very different because there's no such thing as public land.
Mm-hmm.
So I have GPS pins. I have about 120 of them dropped around the state. And I have been going out there and just doing the same thing, taking photos, or what I like to call the modern reconning is I pre-program my drone to fly out there as fast as possible because it only has one little battery. Take a bunch of photos, do like a circle, take a photos and fly back. And then I look at the photos and I'm like, okay, then this is worth me trekking out here. And I'm probably slowly shooting myself in the foot by saying this on this thing. But then I usually always hike out there and I'll have ranchers come up to me, gun in hand or things like that. And they're like, what are you doing out here? And I'll be like, oh, I'm just here shooting photos for National Geographic. And they're like, oh, is my ranch going to be in National Geographic? I was like, sure, maybe. I'm just taking a picture of this mountain range. And they look at me like I'm crazy. But I do emphasize with you of like having like just a tick list of things that like I want to see get done. And it's like there's just not enough time in the universe to get it done.
Yeah.
I know you are aspiring to do some things with the AMGA. What are you working towards a particular goal as far as certifications and all this other stuff going on?
No. So I started guiding in 99. It was Exum of Utah at the time. Now it's Utah Mountain Adventures. And I guided through college and stopped once I started working full time. And then I teach at a lot of the ice climbing festivals and rock climbing festivals, either ice climbing or climbing photography is typically what I do in the summer fests.
Okay.
But after I came out as trans, it was really apparent that I searched for years to try to find anyone like me and couldn't.
Yeah.
And it made me feel like I didn't belong or wouldn't be able to belong. And so it's been very important to me to really build community. And I first started at a lot of the ice fests, trying to make have language in there that my classes were queer friendly or LGBTQIA2S plus friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started evolving that into like queer trans specific classes. But the problem is these fests are often in rural areas.
Yes.
They're can be hard to get to. They can be expensive, and a lot of people from the trans or queer community are like, "There's no way in hell I'm driving or flying across the country to go to Bozeman, Montana, or to Lander, Wyoming, or wherever it might be." I mean, they're already afraid living in their own town.
Yeah, yeah.
And so to go somewhere new is really difficult. So I decided that in addition to that, I wanted to start creating or partnering with guide services all across the country and be able to go out to areas that typically don't have fests or don't have a queer climbing club or group and do an event. Might be just a weekend thing. It could be a multi-day thing, just depending on the situation. And in order to do that, most insurances for guide services require that you have AMGA certification. And so I'm not interested in getting pinned with my IFMGA. I don't want to be a full-time guide, but I need to be able to work with my community.
Yeah.
And so that means going through a lot of the courses to at least get to a certain point where I can create the programming that I want.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
Hopefully the goal is in partnering with these guide services that they can see that there are people who want to take courses like this and that it's worth hiring queer guides in the future to keep these programs going, and then build community. I've seen, as I've gone out to areas and done slideshows or events, that you'll have 5 or 6 trans people in the audience in some areas, and then a lot of other queer people, and most of them didn't know each other. They didn't know that each other existed in that area, and they get a meet, and then all of a sudden, a month later, there's a queer climbing club in that area.
That's pretty cool.
It's amazing.
That's real cool.
Like to be able to help do that, and so I want to use my certifications through the AMGA and guiding to do that exact same thing. Like once that foundation is created, then other people can step in and take over in that area, which is kind of why I worked with Mountain Hardware and the AMGA to create the LGBTQIA2S plus single pitch instructor course. And we just had the second one this year. And out of all the SPI providers, there's one person who can teach that course. There just aren't that many out queer guides, and that needs to change.
What do you? I guess it's probably a very simple question, but like personally, what has this done for you? Like, I guess looking forward in the future. I mean, you've already made such a big impact with starting this and moving forward this, but like, I don't know. Like you think about you do some epic shit sometimes, or you get a feeling and you just wake up the next day and like, do you feel like, I guess, like another piece of the puzzle of the outer thing has just kind of been filled in? Like what, as you've seen this to come fruition, like what is this doing for you?
I wish it was a simple answer. Unfortunately, I don't feel that it is. I think it's very complex.
Okay.
When we first met this morning, you talked about all these people who knew me and had mentioned how important I was to them. And I get messages from trans and queer people every week now. And it's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to put myself in a position to where I could be the person that I didn't have.
Yeah.
And hopefully help someone avoid the dark suicidal areas that I went into because I didn't think I belonged or would be accepted. And that's huge. But then on the other side of that, you have so many people who hate you for it and constantly attack you for it. And so even though I get these amazing messages in my DMs or people reaching out to me, I also get the hate
Yeah.
in there. And every time a company posts about me, there's hate posted on there.
It's funny.
And so it's hard. Like it's amazing, and I'm so happy and glad that I'm in this position, and it's a huge privilege to have the platform that I do and the reach that I do. But it also puts a target on my back.
Yeah.
And it's, even if I didn't have that, my day to day, still walking around, I'm very conscious of where I go and when I go.
Yeah.
Someplace. I'm very careful all the time because my wife and I have been followed and harassed in Salt Lake. I've had things thrown at me. I've had been threatened in a lot of different ways. I've had people try to get physical with me, and it's really scary. And then you add on being very visible and bringing more people to you, and it can be draining.
Yeah, strength is in numbers, though. It's funny. Yeah. I was thinking about something that when you were describing these events, that was real powerful to me. You know, it's very powerful when you only. The beauty of being Black is the beauty and the curse of being Black is it's seen. It's easy being seen. And you can identify with others in the room because it's easily being seen. And you have this instant gratification. You have this instant, like, I see you, you see me, I identify with you. We are undeniable because in this sea of vanilla, we're just this random chocolate chip that's just standing out. And in your case, I thought it was very beautiful that you've talked about being in a room and there's a bunch of LGBT plus people and trans, and they all stand up, and they all just realize that they all existed. And it reminds me of, I kind of told you I'm hearing impaired, I wear hearing aids. And it's one of those things that I have to tell people every time they're new hired at my job. And I don't mind telling people, but it's an invisible, we call this an invisible disease. It's like being blind. It's like you don't know until you actually talk to someone. Mm-hmm. And I think in the situation when I really thought about it, is like, man, it's like, the big thing is just talking to someone and really putting yourself out there. But I can also see how terrifying it really is. But how beautifully blissed, or how overwhelmingly joyful it must be to, like, all of a sudden discover that you have community in a room. And, like, that's just magical. And I was just thinking about it in that perspective of, like, I have it instantly when I see it, but, like, how beautiful would it be just to know that, like, oh, I'm not alone. And, hopefully this community wants to gather and wants to get together. And, I don't know. I always like to say this statement, and this is not do you follow comedians in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah.
Okay. This person is not the greatest person in the world, especially in the context of what we're talking about. But Cat Williams always says, he was like, listen, boo-boo, if you have haters, let them hate. Because that means you doing something fucking fabulous in life, and you go on with your bad self. Shit. And I want to add on to that, as you build up your crew, let them hate. They're going to hate all they want to, because it only means that you're doing the right thing. And it only means that you're bringing goodness and things into this community and into this world that need to be. And people are just scared of change.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just, and it's like, no one wants, I don't know. I argue this all the time, like with the argument of, like, racist root names and that. No one's changing the rock. Like, the roots are still the same. Like, nothing else is changing. We're just making it a much more beautifully inclusive place. And so thank you for that work.
Oh, thanks.
It's magical. And I'm, like, super excited.
It can be beautiful. And then I'm sure you've had this experience, like, it's beautiful, and then it's also heartbreaking in a way
Oh,
that it's 2021 and we're still having these issues with people not wanting to change racist root names, that
yeah.
they're still not accepting people for who they are and who they love. Like,
Yeah. I mean, but also think about it. Was it 1970? I think it was 1971, 1973, somewhere between 1971 and 1973. The first woman ran the Boston Marathon,
yeah,
and she put her initials down because there was nowhere to put gender. And then director tried to like
pull her
assault
out.
her.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't that long ago, you
yeah,
know? And I was talking to my mom about this. My mom was like, she's like, you got to remember, I remember when they bus kids in the National Guard was happening. She's like, I remember that. I remember being a kid watching this. And I'm like these, it's so ironic. No, not ironic is the wrong word. It's so, oh, goddamn. I'm like caught between saying it's like ironic, but it's also a very understandable based on the premise of like how people are, the nature of human beings and everything else. Like it wasn't that long ago. So it makes sense to me that these people are still around. It's like if you watch like old videos from the 80s, and like there's this video that was on social media a couple months ago, and I'll never forget it. It was just like, but it reminds me, not to this extreme, but it reminds me a little bit of my upbringing. But this black girl's just walking. These kids are just trying to ride. No, black group of girls are riding their bikes. They're trying to go to McDonald's in this white neighborhood. And all these kids are just saying racial slurs, stopping them, yelling them, telling them when they got to get out of here. And I think this was like 1988, 1989. And I'm like, these people are in their late 50s, early 60s. Like, these people are still around.
yeah,
Like, it's not, and it's like, if you look at career politicians, most career politicians were around during civil rights. They were still around. They watched assassinations, murder, looting. They watched, people being, God, they watched it all. And don't give two shits.
yeah.
I mean, I'm speaking mainly of the senators because, like, you can be 8 years a career, and you can be a career senator. I mean, that's personally throwing this out there. That's why I think there should be term limits. But like, these people are still around, and I think it's mind blowing. And I commend you, and I think I just think of if you have people hating on you, it just means because you're fucking fabulous. So just go on with your bad self, boo boo. And then I don't know. This is this stupid meme that always shows up in my feed, but I think of like Sonic the Hedgehog. This meme of this kid wearing it, and I think it's Macaulay Culkin, the kid from Home Alone, or someone who looks like him. But the meme always said, he's like, the problem with being faster than the speed of light is you're always in the darkness. And it just, it's silly. But what you were talking about just made that meme resonate in my head. And I think this is so weird, too, that we're at a time in life where memes can be brought into major conversations.
It's amazing how much a meme can convey.
Oh, my God. But based on that statement, I think, I just want you to know from, as far as representing my community and whatever else I represent, my hood in Texas, I support you unequivocally. And I'm like honored to soak in your intergalactic vibes that you're putting out in the universe here today. I think it's just fucking cool as shit. And
thanks.
I'm just really super proud of you. And I'm like I know this is the first time we met, and it's really weird for me to say that, but I'm like super amped. And, and then I also aspire to have your climbing guidebook accolades too. That's like big goal, big goal. But I got I have a lot of catching up to do, but I'm running as fast as I can. Not the speed of light, but I'm getting close.
Guidebooks are never at the speed of light.
No.
It's a slow, painful process.
Yeah, I am learning that slowly. I'm trying to be, as far as I know, I don't know of anyone who does this, but I'm working on a project and I'm trying to raise money for a little documentary, but I want to rewrite a guidebook that
Uh-huh.
hasn't been rewritten in 20 to 30 years. And as far as I know, I don't know of any minorities that have ever written a guidebook. And I'm sure someone's done it. I'm sure someone has written some form of it. Maybe not in rock climbing, but I'm sure someone has written one. But that is like my aspiration. So I would maybe after this, or even during this, but I just really want to pick your brain and kind
Yeah.
of get some advice. I know it's a grueling process, and it's like a little bit of what I've already done.
Yeah. Be happy to.
Beautiful. Um, is there, I'm very serious when I like to tell people like this is your show as much as it is mine, and my platform is your platform. Your platform is like the size of Jupiter. Let's just be honest. But um, you know, most of my listener base is in Texas, so it's very different. We're much like Utah. If there is, I guess, like a message, a saying, or kind of a message of support to give anybody, is there anything that you would want to say, or resources, or recommend someone where to go, even if it's getting in touch with you, obviously through social, but like if someone's looking to get outdoors, and let's just not like limit to rock climbing, let's just say like in general, like where should one start?
I think overall, I guess what I'd say, for someone who is queer or trans, like you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many more of us out there than you think. And on that same note, to other climbers and outdoor folks, you have to remember, just like with you having a disability that's invisible, people didn't know I was trans most of my life. Like, I kept that hidden from everyone and did everything I could to hide that. And because of that, I sat and listened to my climbing partners, my friends, my family, coworkers all say really horrible things about trans or queer people. Um, I took note every time someone said something, and my friends around me stayed silent.
Mm-hmm.
We're listening because we have been so afraid because of everything going on in society and still going on.
Yeah.
Um, there's 150 bills right now that are against trans people in the U.S. that are some in one part of legislation or another right now. There is real danger for people to come out. And if you're living in an area, especially a conservative area like Texas,
Yeah.
it's really important, if you are supportive of trans or queer people, that you show that. Because we're listening, we're watching. It might be your best friend, it might be your coworker, it might be your brother or sister. You have no idea. And we're taking note of everything people say and using that to evaluate, rightly or wrongly, whether it's going to be safe for us to come out.
Yeah.
Having my friends be there for me when I came out to them and be supportive was what allowed me to keep going. I was so suicidal and hated myself for being who I was, couldn't accept it. And the more friends that I came out to that told me they still loved me and they would be there for me, that gave me the strength and courage to go on. And everyone out there can be that for someone. Like, you have so much more power than you think to support someone. When someone comes out to you, if they come out to you, everyone knows what coming out means, or they think they do. But I don't think people realize the significance of that. Like, I hid who I was. I knew who I was at 5 years old. And I hid that until I was in my 40s. I was so ashamed of that, so afraid of that. And so for me to come out to people, that was my deepest, darkest secret. The thing I almost killed myself over. And the fact that I trusted someone enough to reveal that and share that with them, that's meaningful to me. That means I trust that person. I care about that person enough to do that. And I think people should take that a little more seriously.
Yeah.
We, my wife and I, had someone who didn't take it seriously enough, and she started telling other people. And luckily, I was in a place where I could deal with that. But if it had been a few months earlier, I might not be here anymore because I wasn't ready for people, everyone outside of who I chose to know. There are very few things that you can control when you're coming out.
Yeah.
And who you come out to is one of those. And when you come out to them. And that it's an amazing thing. And I think most people in their life will probably have an opportunity to be in that situation on the receiving end of someone coming out to them, of standing up for someone who's queer. I mean, it shouldn't just be someone who's queer. You should stand up for everyone
Amen.
who needs it. But people are watching, and you just never know who that is. And so I'd just say, anytime you have a chance, when coworkers, friends, or family are saying something negative, stand up, say something, do something, be there for someone who needs it. It can make a huge difference, more than people realize. And as far as like climbing community, hiking community, when there are people who haven't felt safe or welcome coming out to events, you know, like a lot of times we go into the climbing gym and we just want to train, like we want to climb, and you kind of ignore everyone or everything. But you got to remember that like some people are so afraid of going into the gym in the first place because they might be the only black person in there.
Oh, yeah.
They're probably going to be the only trans person in there, or whatever it might be. And there's a lot of discomfort, and rightly so, from that. Like I've been harassed in climbing gyms. I'm afraid of using the bathrooms in climbing gyms, the changing rooms. Someone just looking up and smiling and saying hello can make a huge difference in feeling welcome.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of times I'll go into a gym and everyone's so focused, and it's not that anyone is necessarily trying to be rude, but then you do have the people who are being rude in there, and no one else says or does anything or says hello. And you're like, wow, like, I don't know that I want to come back to this place.
Yeah.
And that same thing could happen on the trail if you're wanting to get into hiking. So just knowing that you're being welcoming and accepting to someone can make all the difference in whether they return to the sport or not. And so I think really keeping that in mind, thinking about how much it took for someone who's different from what society expects an outdoors person to be, to show up, can be huge for them.
Yeah.
And support them in a way that's not patronizing or tokenizing.
Yeah.
But just welcoming them, being supportive, saying hello, smiling. That can go a long way.
I would agree. I would definitely agree. I think I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and it's funny you talk about taking note. And I do this a lot. And so being hearing impaired, people always ask me like, oh, you can lip read. And I'm like, not really. I mean, I can read the basics, you know, F-U, this, you know, the N-bomb. I mean, I recognize those, you know, but what I read more than anything else is people's eyebrows. Like their eyes say a lot. People's eyes, like they say eyes are the window to the soul. I say eyes are a billboard. And I can always tell when I go into a small town, when they look at me, people's eyebrows or eyes and eyebrows and eyelashes in the brow of their head will always move in a way that is either distasteful or they're like, oh, this is just another human being.
Yeah.
And that's like the easiest way I can definitely tell. So I definitely agree with you in the sentiment of taking note. Like that is a big part of just like walking around and navigating these spaces, especially in rural areas. And I have, you know, I'm I think I'm very blessed with this mentality and this nature. I've always had, I don't want to say thick skin, but I've always kind of had like a fuck you attitude. I deserve to be here and I can be here if I want to. My taxes pay for this. And so I've always gone places, but there are definitely moments where I'm like, all right, I got like a 15-minute window. So I need to just like recon, do what I got to do, and then get out before things could potentially get nasty.
Yeah.
And I think it is a different world that you're navigating and coming out. I mean, Jesus Christ, that's like realizing the sky, you've thought the sky was purple. You've lied to yourself until the sky is purple your whole life. And then you're finally not admitting, but you're finally just like telling everybody else, okay, the sky is blue. And I know it's a very terrible example, but I can't even begin to imagine it. Like, I just can't. Like, I don't think that's something I'll ever truly understand, but I'm happy to support. And I guess I have a question, and I've had someone say this before, and I don't know if this is something that you would rather or rather not, or is it kind of neutral? But I've definitely had friends who say they support other people, but their argument is like, I don't agree, but I respect. And they're like, and I find that as a very interesting statement. And it's like, I don't agree with it, but they are a human being. They deserve respect and they deserve to be heard and they deserve this. And like, I guess, like, is that okay? Is that, I don't want to say better than nothing because the other end of the stick is real bad.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, how does that make you feel? What is your thoughts on that?
It's better than nothing.
Yeah.
The version of it that we have here with like the Mormon church or throughout Christianity is love the sinner, hate the sin type mentality.
Yeah. No, I've heard that one. That one's good. That one's good.
The same type
classic.
of thing. Like, I'm the same person I was that everyone thought I was years ago. I just had to pretend and keep pretending to be someone everyone else wanted me to. Nothing about me as a person changed except I let everyone else in and I accepted who I was. I finally found love for myself. I hated who I was. I never felt, even with my wife, like I never felt like I was worthy or worth her love. And I feel that way now. My coming out allowed me to be, I guess, more of myself visibly. But I'm still the exact same person that I was before. So when someone says they don't agree, what don't you agree with? That someone can find and be happy with who they are and express that? That someone is able to love someone?
Yeah.
That they can find a partner that loves them back and they can have a beautiful life together, they can be happy. How do you not agree with that?
Yeah, no.
Like that's definitely a hard thing. I mean, we are who we are. You know, and it's not shown a lot, but I mean there's so much medical research that shows that, you know, trans and queer people are born this way. There's no doubt from the medical resources and research, you know, that's just a part of life. We've always been here, regardless of what the narrative is that maybe trans is a new thing or whatever.
No, it's been around for centuries.
For sure. And there's a lot of reasons why people think that are based on society. But what is there to disagree with? A human being themselves, loving themselves, being happy. Why shouldn't we want that for everyone? So what is there to disagree about?
Yeah.
That's the hard thing for me with that statement is, it just doesn't make sense. Like, why wouldn't you want someone to be happy and healthy and a more functioning, positive person.
Yeah, no, I think I mean, I definitely agree with you, and I think it's right. I think the hard part about it is like, and I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. So, I think, you can't change. People have to want to change their mind and have to want. And I think this is like the slow way. And even I'm guilty of it too, because until I understood a lot more and until I actually went out of my way and started befriending more trans people, but actually just sitting down and having Alexa, prime example, like just sitting down and having a conversation with her and just like, okay, like I want to know who you are, like what's going on here. And like we're just not like what you're going through, just you as an individual and you as a person, your passion, your loves, your desires, and I think it's really hard because, as you said, love the sinner, not the sin, is in their minds, and people can't. I think I don't think people can separate the two, and I think the big thing is it's like, respecting or not disagreeing with you or not what am I looking for? It's like this statement, and it's like, if you cannot, and this is where, and I'll admit I had to learn this, but like, if I cannot empathize with you, if I cannot accept you, if I cannot accept what you're going through, if I cannot accept and help you, maybe not necessarily help, but if I can't empathize and be supportive of you, then I don't have trans friends. I know trans people.
Mm-hmm.
And the Black community, like if you can't understand the Black struggle, if you cannot empathize with everything that's going on, and you cannot really feel and let your heart go out to what's going on and want to see something better and make a change, and going the same for both of us, want to make a change in some capacity that you are willing and comfortable, you don't have Black friends, Black people.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the thing that's really a hard pill to swallow. Like, it's like you have to be willing to step out and really just get uncomfortable and accept that either what I believe is wrong, or I'm going to openly just deny the reality of this person that's in my life. And I think it's really, really hard. And I think that's why people draw a line. And once again, I've been guilty of this. They draw a line where it's like, well, I'm not for it, but I'm not going to get in the way of it, And I think the issue is like, if you're not for it, you're against it, and you have to be willing to help it. And everyone is different. I'm not saying everyone needs to get out there and start marching. I'm not saying everyone needs to get out there and, buy a pride flag. I'm not saying that, but like in your own particular way, you have to figure out how can you stand up and support the people that you love, or support the people that are in your community that you want, and you want to see the best in your community. And I think that's the really, really, really hard part. And I think that was the chagrining thing for me coming into the realization of this. It's like, this is much more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's definitely true. Like, for so many in my friend network, my professional network, I'm the first openly trans person that they've ever met. And that's changed a lot of things for them. The hard thing with it, and, as humans and how we've been socialized, we do often have to have connections in order to better understand or even think about some of these issues. We get very narrowly focused based on who's around us and the issues going on in our own area, and it's hard to understand how some of these issues affect someone else that's, a state or two away or whatever it might be. And as more people come out, families are having to deal with it. Friends, coworkers, are having to look at this. The hard thing, though, And one of the things like I try to push people who follow me, if you're only following me as your only example of a trans friend or trans person, you're not getting the full experience. I'm super privileged in my trans experience. You know, I'm white, I'm middle class, I have pretty privilege, I had the funds to have surgeries. You know, I look presentable, you know, in a way that people are like, oh, she doesn't look like what we pictured a trans woman looking like.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've had all sorts of comments like that, you know, and so by following me only or following anyone from any group who's been historically marginalized, you're still not getting the full picture. You're getting the picture of what it is to be trans for that one person in that one area that they're in that one region, town, sport, whatever it might be. And often that can lead, you know, there's always, I'm sure you've heard this, oh, well, you're not totally black. Like you're okay. You're
Oh yeah.
different from everyone
Oh
else.
yeah. I've gotten that my entire life. Everyone's like, you don't really seem black.
Yeah.
And that's happened my entire life.
Yeah. And like, I get that, like, oh, well, you don't really seem like you're queer or like you're different than other trans people. And like,
No. We're all the same. It's just,
we're all the same and we're all different.
yeah.
Like, yeah, I am different than other trans people and I'm the same as other trans people. Like we all are. Like there's no monolith in being black. There's no monolith in being trans. There's no monolith in being Latinx, like whatever it might be. We're all still very different and we all have different experiences. And to really understand, you have to first start with understanding that the one person you're friends with isn't the full experience. And starting there that's a good starting point. Having a friend, someone you care about. But if you really want to understand, you need to start looking at what the experience is like for others like them in other places. Yeah. What is it like to be a black trans woman in the South, where this year there have been more than 10 black trans women murdered already? Last year there was over 40 trans people murdered, and the majority of them were black trans women. You know, so I'm always afraid. I have issues, but I still go most places that I want. I still am able to do a lot of things because I'm white.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we base our policies for climbing gyms or how we welcome people based on some of the things that I experience, we're still leaving other people out.
No, I agree.
Because we don't fully understand what they're going through to the extent. And
I just thought of a funny little campaign, and my buddy Devin Dabney, who raps about climbing and a bunch of other stuff and social justice, but I don't want to give it away. But his podcast, the American Climbing Podcast, drops pretty soon. Mm-hmm. It's coming up I believe in June, but he's making a thing about this. But when you were talking about people like you on their social media feed being the only trans person, I'm like, you are the equivalent of the black square. Like, you know, and I thought it's just in my mind, just for shits and giggles, it would be very comical that if you made your own version of a trans square and just made fun of it for people, but like, don't follow me, follow my trans square profile. And then you can post this trans square and then you can feel like you're satisfied and you can feel good about yourself, but don't follow me because you're wasting space on the internet. So I don't know. It just made me chuckle just thinking about it.
Yeah. It's hard because we do want them to follow. We do want them to at least start somewhere.
Yeah, I agree.
But we also have to know that it's not enough. Following one person is not enough. Posting a black square is not enough.
No, it's like
donating to one charity once a year is.
No, it involves boots
enough.
on the ground. And boots on the ground might look different to different people, but mm-hmm. I guess the best way to say it is it involves sweat equity.
Yeah.
That's the only way to put it. It's got to be some form of sweat equity. Mm-hmm. And you need to determine what that sweat equity is to you, and then you need to determine, and then once you determine what that is, that sweat equity that you have determined is probably what makes you comfortable everything that we all want in life, everything that we want to see happen for others, ourselves, is just outside of our comfort zone. That is a fact of life. And that is something that I teach the kids that I coach all the time. Like, every single thing we all want in life is just outside of our comfort zone. And whether you want it for yourself, your friends, your family, your community, the world at large, it's just outside of your comfort zone. And you have to just, you know, I've never been one of like dipping my toe in the water kind of approach to a pool. I'm just like, just splash in and let's just get this over with and we can just play. You know, it's like people always ask me, why are you only hiking chacos? I'm like, 'cause I don't want to have to like go through the whole process. I just want to burrow through the water and get to the crag. Like, let's just keep moving. Like, let's just put the work in. Oh. That's a weird analogy. I don't know why it popped in my head, but.
Well, the thing to think about, you know, everyone makes some of this out to be a big deal. And it is. It's uncomfortable work. It's hard to start relearning things.
Mm-hmm.
But we've all done that as climbers. We've all done that as outdoor people.
Oh, yeah, we have the toolkits.
Like, you often start off, especially now, maybe you start off, you go to the climbing gym and you start learning all about climbing through that. And then you go outside for the first time and you start learning that. Then maybe you start trad climbing, and then maybe you go to bigger mountains, and then maybe you look at guiding, or you take your wilderness first responder course. Like, there's all these things you continually add and build on. You start in one place, and, you know, we're climbers.
Yeah.
You can usually walk around to the top of the cliff. You can take the easier hiking trail to the top of the mountain rather than taking the vertical face on there. We choose as climbers to take the most difficult path for us.
Yeah, no, we do.
So why do we get stuck in this idea that social justice issues are so difficult and so scary, and that we should be able to read a book and figure it out? Like, this is an ongoing red point that you're going to be working on a project for the rest of your life. It's constantly changing, evolving, and you're learning, but like, we have chosen that path with our pastime. We can choose to do that.
Yeah, we as climbers,
these other issues.
When it comes to these social issues, we as climbers turn into the hikers that are like, why are you guys carrying those mattresses on your back? You know, you could just walk around to the backside and get up there real easy. But when it comes to rock climbing, that's it. You know, it's funny, you describe that as the macro level of it. And I want to really break it down, and let's continue to use climbing as the analogy. Let's go down to the micro.
Well, it's a climbing podcast. So.
It is. It's about the soul of climbing. We go all the way out. But so like the micro level of this is, you know, we're talking about people getting uncomfortable and really kind of like helping out. The same thing happens when you project. Like, we have the toolkits for this. Like, think about what happens to your project. You do a move, you fall, you probably feel pretty stupid because you didn't see a foot or you didn't see something there. You get up, you feel good, you make some progress, you fall again. This time you're getting used to getting slapped around a little bit, but you're probably still going to feel stupid along the way that way. And the same process is involved where when you are starting to fight for people that want to exist within your community, when you don't know what to do, you're probably going to feel a little stupid. But as long as you show up and start the conversation, people are accepting. People understand that you don't know. People don't expect you to know. If you did know, then we would be like, what the fuck are you doing? Why, where have you been, asshole? Where have you been? But no one's like that, because we're all getting smacked off this project on a regular basis. Now, if you're listening to this podcast and you have never, ever, ever, ever project in your life, boo-boo, you are missing out on the most joyful suffering of your entire life, because I see you cheesing over here because you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the most beautiful, anguishing, gut-wrenching experience ever, projecting. I'm just like, ugh. But so is this. And I think that's the thing is like, we all have the appropriate toolkits to be successful at this. These are just muscles, mentally, physically, emotionally, and in our gut, that we have not really flexed a lot. Yeah. And so I think it's like, you know, this is not one of those things that you can just, like, there's no cheat beta. There's no cheap beta for this route. It's like, it's real direct.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for letting me in your home, in your space. And I have enjoyed talking with you so much. I was like, I'm not going to lie, total went fanboy as soon as you replied on Instagram. I was like, yes, I'm like so fucking excited. And I just admire who you are, everything that you stand for, everything that you do. And I want you to know that I unequivocally 100% have your back, and I will slap any motherfucker that comes your way. I will give it. Listen, I keep my pimp hand strong for a reason, and I'm on your team. I'm unequivocally on your team, and anyone who knows me and supports this podcast is on your team. And if you are listening to this podcast and you don't want to be on her team, you can unsubscribe, you can delete the episode, you can email me, and I will take you off the sticker club, and I will no longer send you the fabulous stickers. But anyone and everyone, as far as I'm concerned, we're on your team. We want to see the rock climbing world get better, because if it's better for you, it's better for me. And if it's better for you and me, it's better for every fucking person.
For sure. Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're
Feel
welcome.
the same way. You know, I think one of the things people, I think, sometimes lose sight of is both of us are in communities additional to our main identity.
Yeah.
That overlap and intersect every other identity.
Oh yeah.
Being trans and queer, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are in the world. Someone in your community is trans and queer. Just like someone like having a disability can affect any race, religion,
it doesn't
gender.
Matter.
Yeah. And there are very few, like, those are two of the probably only identities that do that. And so being trans is not just a trans or LGBTQIA issue. It's a black issue, it's a brown issue, it's a white issue, it's a Christian issue, a Muslim issue, whatever it might be. Like, it's a part of every community.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to do better in every community to support everyone. We're all interconnected, like you said.
Yeah.
Like, the issues that affect us, while I'm specifically trans and queer, like you said, by supporting Black Lives Matter and Black people and AAPI people right now, it's protecting my community. It's making me safer as well.
Yeah.
And we all have to step up and do more together.
Amen. If people want to find you, support you, or just get in touch with you, what medium or how do you prefer that to be done?
Instagram is probably I don't know. I'm having issues with social media.
No,
I got too addicted to it. I think, like doom scrolling during the quarantine.
Yeah, but, no, I deliberately did not get on Twitter.
Yeah.
I did not get on Twitter, and I did not get on Pinterest, because Pinterest is toxic. I did not know that.
I didn't know that.
There's a dark side of Pinterest. It's like, oh yeah, it's like the dark side of Reddit. Like, it's real. Like, I was like, someone just sent me some stuff, and I was like, this is on Pinterest?
Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Be careful there.
Yeah. I haven't looked on Pinterest in a while.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, my Instagram, Nikki, it's NIKKI, K_Smith is the main one. I have another account that's my photo one that I don't think will last much longer. But
really, why?
I'm having a hard time with like managing two different social media accounts. Like, I rarely post to either of them right now. I've had a hard time just wanting to post.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think I did a lot to hide who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so my other accounts pull photo, and that's kind of what I've kind of gone by with my photography.
Mm-hmm.
And I think looking back now, it was subconsciously just another way to hide who I was. And I'm tired of hiding. So I'm probably going to delete that account and just
Run with
do
it.
photos and my own stuff on my main one. That's my name and who I am. And if people don't like it, they can
fuck off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love your photos. I definitely love your portrait work.
Oh,
I think it's beautiful. I would request that you continue to post your portrait or your photo work, just because it's beautiful and it is. I don't know. I like seeing people's art. It gives me hope for the universe, and so that would be it. But yeah. Once again, thank you for your time. You're an amazing human being. All right.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did recording it and listening to it again. It was truly, honestly, being in her was like sitting in Jupiter's wake, just being caught in a gravity well of absolute kindness, love, compassion. And the funny part, and this, I'm telling you guys now, I'm a big sci-fi nerd. Most of the time when you're caught in a gravity well, you're spiraling down to your doom. But I felt she was just whipping me around her orbit to shoot me back off into the universe, into the galaxy, with a better mindset, a better heart, a more tempered soul. I mean, I can get into this all day, but we don't need to start another podcast because we're ending this one. If you enjoyed this, please follow, like, subscribe, leave us a comment. Those things do wonderful things for the algorithm, for getting us out. Join us on the Patreon, where you'll hear from me. You can get recaps of the month, recaps of what's going on with me personally, and some occasional early releases of episodes. I want to thank you all for listening to Sends and Suffers podcast. And remember, if you're not suffering, are you really even sending at all? Nikki Mario.